Λόγητος Χριστός ο Θεός ημών, ούτως ευδοκίσας δόξας είναι.
Morning.
Nice to see you again. We continue on with our Bible study, the Gospel of Matthew. If you want to pull out the Bibles in your pews, that's a good thing to do in the morning. And if you have not, you don't have a Bible at home, please go to the bookstore and buy one. And you want to be careful which edition you buy, because there are many, many different translations. And it's important to know that the gospel is translated properly. Why? Because it wasn't written in English. It was written in ancient Greek and Hellenistic Greek, and that Hellenistic Greek now has to be translated. So the meaning many times, there's a Bible out there called the Living Bible. And unless someone will probably sue me for saying the wrong thing, I'll simply say that it's not something you should read, because the translation does not follow what we believe in, what we practice, okay? So you want the Revised Standard or you want the Orthodox Study Bible. Those are the ones you want to look at. Before I do that, I want to show you something very unique. Hold on a minute. Let me show you something. I have to go out here to get it. We are all a piece or a part of the mosaic of life. This is a piece of the new mosaic that's just arrived. It's going to be put in the narthex. This is a part of the angel's legs that are coming down. And you'll see two beautiful icons, one on either side. If you put all the pieces together from both of them, it's 32,000 small pieces of this stone. And the reason I raised that up to see it is that, you know, separately when you look at this, you say, that's a nice stone. But when you put them all together, they create a picture. They create something which is beautiful, something which can be venerated, something that can be admired. That's how we are as people. Individually we're there, we know that God loves us, but when He puts us all together and He teaches us something, that's when we shine. That's when we're able to be seen more. Peter, could you put this back for me? So the gospel, thank you. In the Gospel of Matthew, if you turn there, I think it's, let me show you the page. Page is 14. It's called The Disciples in the World. And you remember last week we talked about this, that you are the salt of the earth. But if salt loses its flavor, how shall it be seasoned? It is then good for nothing, but to be thrown out and trampled underfoot by men. You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden. Nor do they light a lamp and put it under a bush or basket or a bushel, but on a lampstand, and it gives light to all who are in the house. Let your light so shine before men, that they may see your good works and glorify your Father who is in heaven. He goes on to say, do not think that I have come to destroy the law or the prophets. I do not come to destroy, but to fulfill. For assuredly I say to you, until heaven and earth pass away, one jot, one tittle will not mean the pass from the law until all is fulfilled. Some of the translations say 1 iota. Whoever therefore breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches men so shall be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does and teaches them, he shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I say to you, unless your righteousness exceeds the righteousness of the scribes and the Pharisees, you will by no means enter the kingdom of heaven. Let's remember that Matthew was a Jew, and he was writing to confront the Jews who were more concerned about, is my belt here or is my belt here? They didn't care about the people that were dying and starving in the street. They wanted to make sure that their belt was in a good position. Like that really means something. So a lot of what he says and he writes in this gospel, we have to put it within that tone. Now, salt. How many of you like salt in your food? Go ahead, come on, you're in church, you can raise your hands. I love salt. I'm not supposed to have a lot of it, but I love it. So I like to sprinkle a little bit on, right? Gives a nice, do you like salt? You like salt. It gives a nice taste. Pepper, any of you like pepper? You put too much pepper on your food, what happens? You sneeze. But the salt doesn't do that to you. It just causes heart disease. All right? So it has its downsides to it. But salt then was a way that there was no refrigerator. You didn't go buy a Kenmore, a two-door, 24 cubic feet. There was no such thing. It was a little box, and they put some salt in it, and that's how you kept your meat going. If you had meat. So Matthew is using the salt to say if you want to keep something good and something that is edible and not poisonous, you have to add salt to it. Matthew uses that analogy for us, that we have to be the salt so that when we go into certain circumstances, we make everything in there taste good or be good. Now, he goes on to say that if you don't, what happens? It goes bad. Ever tasted rotten food? It's terrible. Do you ever get sick from rotten food? Many people do. So that's the key of the salt of the earth. So we are called to be the salt of the earth. He speaks of the fact that his followers are to be the light of the world. Now, we're to be the light of the world, but not in a boastful way. Look at me, I'm the light, I'm the light, and everybody watch out. Okay? That's not what he's saying. He's saying, any of you been through a hurricane before? In Florida, I've been through many, okay? When you go through a hurricane, what do you look for at night? A lamp. Some kind of thing so you see, so you don't fall and stub your toe on the bedpost, right? Whack. You whack your toe, you break your toe. I've done it a couple times. You need a light. Well, Matthew is saying that you are the light of the world, therefore you need to take your light out from under the bushel and put it where people can see. Because if you don't, you're hoarding it. You're keeping it for yourself, and you have no right to do that. So if we're leading a good life, it's up to us to give light to others. Years ago, you know that I went to, I think it was about my 16th or 17th year here, something like that. I started to feel my sermons were growing stale. And I said, okay, where do I go to learn how to preach better? So I'm looking in the Greek periodicals, in the theological magazines, nothing. We took 2 classes on preaching at seminary, and then they said, okay, go out of the nest, start preaching. And they sent me where? To Astoria. We're in Astoria, New York, at St. Demetrius. People are lined up from the narthex to the iconostation at the beginning of Orthros. Father Anthimos, now Bishop-elect, says, go and preach. First sermon in Greek, he says. Oh boy. And I was in trouble. And the people ate me alive that first day. All right, so that's the kind of background. So I rush forward to going to find out how do I preach better. And I go to Robert Schuller's Crystal Cathedral in California. I went there for 4 weeks in total. And I walked in, and you know Dr. Robert Schuller of the Crystal Cathedral, the Hour of Power, speaks to 100 million people a week in his prime time. Now it's no longer there. Some of the reruns are playing. But I looked at him, he's a tall man, Dutch Reformed. He says, Father, what are you doing here? What are you doing here? He said, you're the only one in the room with a collar on. I said, I know that. He said, there's 50 people in the class, and you're the only priest. Why are you here? I said, well, I'm here to learn how to speak better to my people. I feel I'm lacking. He says, okay, we can help you with that. He said, but what faith are you? I said, I'm a Greek Orthodox priest. You are? He says, I have to kiss your hand. I said, why should you kiss my hand? He said, because, he said, your church is the ancient, historical church of Christ. You are the original church. I just went to Russia, I just went to Greece, and look at what you have. So I'm thinking to myself, I got the angel of God over here saying, okay, let him kiss your hand, bless him. I have Satan over here screaming in my ear, something, this guy wants something. All right? So I blessed him, he kisses my hand, then he gives me the uppercut. And I say this sometimes when I travel and I speak. He gives me the uppercut. He says, Father, I love your blessing. Thank you for your... But what's wrong with you people? Didn't Christ say to put and take your lamp out so people can see it? What's wrong with you Orthodox? You're always keeping it under the bushel. Take it out. If you are the ancient historical church of Christ, if you preserve the scripture, if you preserve the saints and the relics for everybody else, why are you hiding it? We'll help you do that. I give you that story because he referenced the Gospel of Matthew. The Gospel of Matthew, taking the light out, he compares, listen to this. Jesus compares the disciples to a city atop a mountain. A city is not able to be hidden. Can you hide a city on the mountain? The slightest light at night that you put on, bang, somebody knows you're there. In the daytime, it doesn't matter. But at night, you can see. So he, Matthew, likens them to a city on a hill. He wants us to be that city on the hill so that we act in a way that we are the salt of the earth and we're also the light. The light shined before men, fearlessly living as open disciples. In this, Jesus is not telling his disciples to do good works in order to be seen by men, but he commands them to do the opposite, because the Pharisees that he was writing against were they wanted to show up. They want to show up and they wanted to be there and looking good. But Christ refers to them that inside they were rotten, like the tombs of the dead. They had no essence to give to people. That's what we're called. We're called to live above, not be better than, but above the sort of mirmingia on the earth. Okay? All right. He also goes on to say this, and it's important to realize because Christ was criticized for coming and sort of shaking up the establishment. The Jewish people then, they kind of liked what was going on. They said, don't bother me. Don't shake my world. Don't shake my power base. I'm in charge here. Who are you to come along now and say this stuff and make these people actually feel like they're something? Because we are. We are created for good and better things. Christ, therefore, denies the accusation that he came to tear down or to abolish the law and the prophets. He says clearly that he comes to fulfill them, fulfilling them. Now, he also uses the term iota and what's called horn of the letter. The horn of the letter refers to the Hebrew. And when you want to differentiate in the Hebrew language between certain terms, there is a mark that's put there. It's called the horn of the letter. That's what he wants us to do. He wants us to be different. Not better, not conceited, but to be different. To use our discernment to make better decisions so that we live good lives. Now, are we going to fall? Are we going to make mistakes? Yeah, welcome to my world. We make mistakes all the time. Who doesn't make mistakes? Any of you not make any mistakes? John Philippakis is here. He'll paint an icon for you. Okay? So we have to realize that we can move forward, we can make mistakes, but God continues to love us. Now, finally, I'll say to you that God demands a righteousness that touches inner motivation and that transcends what's called caustic loopholes. In other words, we make all kinds of excuses. And it's tough to sort of look in the mirror and say, okay, this is what I am. These are the mistakes I've made. These are the good things I've made. God, can you forgive me? If we don't ask for the forgiveness, we can never become the salt of the earth. We can try. It's like folks will tell me, we'll see them at the festival this year. Father, how are you, Father? And I'm looking at it and I'm saying, who is this? Father, don't you remember? 25 years ago, you baptized me. Sir, I don't remember that I baptized you because I haven't seen you in 25 years. Yeah, but you did. I know. I was there. It was in the Colivitra. I was there. I said, yeah, I know, but I don't know who you are. Let's remember as we close today that the church is not hatching, matching, and dispatching, as we've said. All right? Baptizing, marrying, and burying. There's a lot of good things that happen in the middle. And Christ wants us to be the salt of the earth so that we can overcome the difficulties in life. He knows the difficulties. He knows they're called, and we'll talk about this at some point. St. Athanasius speaks about them, the blameless passions, and how we get caught up in those passions that are difficult for us. God bless you. We have Judy back today. Welcome, Judy and George. Very good. Patricia has had to fly somewhere, and thank you for stepping in. I'm sure the choir loves seeing you. Thank you.